I'm a hustler, baby.
It's time for Hustle Her podcast. I'm your host, Deshae Keynes. Hustle Her is all about inspiring women through real life experiences that have helped to mold and develop not only me, but my guests into the entrepreneurs and leaders we are today. If you're an enterprising woman determined to succeed and looking for a bit of motivation, a bit of tough love, and some actionable takeaways to be the best you, girl, you are in the right place. Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Scooter Mart. At Scooter Mart, you can buy, sell, or rent a bike with them. Make sure you head over to their Hamilton location on Church Street or their Paget location on Lovers Lane, or visit them on www.scootermart.bm. Hey guys, and welcome back to Hustle Her Podcast. Thank you for spending some time with me today. We want to give a big shout out to our season sponsors, 59 Front and Brown and Company. We also want to shout out Scooter Mart Bermuda. If you guys have any cycle needs, make sure you head over to scootermart.bm for all of your cycle care needs. So super excited about my episode today. I've had the honor of interviewing my guests before, but when we were audio only, and then we made the decision to wait and do this again when we were doing video, and we finally been able to come together and sit down and have this lovely conversation. She is the CEO of 2.0 Collective, the lovely Miss Polina Branco. How are you?
I'm great.
Yes,
Thank you,
I'm
Deshae,
so
for
glad
having
that
me.
we're here.
Me too.
Yes.
It's been a long time coming.
It is.
It's great to be
Everything
here.
happens for a reason, and this is when we were meant to do this. So
Absolutely.
I'm excited. Yeah. It's so crazy. I was saying somebody the other day, I think it was my mom. She's like, I thought you interviewed Polina before. And I was like, I did. But then literally like 2 months later, I moved to video, and I was like, I would much rather do this on video than to have this on audio only. So.
And you know, a lot has changed.
Yeah.
It's been 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of my answers then might be different. You know, we all grow and change.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what comes out of today.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. All right. So let's jump in. Let's get some people to get to know you a little bit better, and then we'll get right into it. All right. So few rapid fires. I'm happiest
When I am with good people around me and the pace is slow.
Okay. Love that. When you get on a plane and you're settled and the plane is about to take off, what do you do? What's your go-to?
I look outside.
Mm-hmm.
I love looking at the clouds. When I was little, I used to think that whatever troubles I had down here on Earth, they were gone when I was up in the clouds. And I've been traveling on planes ever since I was very, very little. So it's a bit of meditation for me.
Okay.
Looking at the clouds.
Love that. Okay. Tell me about your skincare routine, because the skin looks phenomenal. So what do you do to
You're
maintain
too
it?
kind. It's actually very simple. I use Pestle and Mortar, the brand, and then some good old tinted SPF.
Love that. Okay. It's been hot lately. The full face of makeup is only on recording days, so I totally get it. All right. What does love feel like?
Calm, tranquility. I don't like using the term happiness. I feel like it's very overused, and I feel that it puts so much pressure on us to constantly chase that happiness, you know, be happy, look for happiness. So for me, it's content. It's that feeling of calm and satisfaction and feeling comfortable in my own skin.
All right. And who was your celebrity crush growing up? Or now, if that's okay. Sorry, Mike.
Celebrity crush growing up. See, I was raised in communism, so the celebrities you know and the ones that I know probably are a bit different.
That's okay.
So I had some Latin American singers, but one, not per se a crush, but somebody that I felt was absolutely gorgeous was Shakira.
Okay.
In her very, very early years when she had long dark hair and henna, and she was beautiful.
Love that. Okay. All right. So you mentioned growing up in communism. So tell me about young Polina. What were you like as a child? Where are you originally from? Where did you grow up? Fill me in.
So that is one of my favorite questions. And my husband will probably chuckle because it's a little game I play when people meet me and they're trying to place me and they say, where are you from? And I go, well, where do you think I'm from? So I get placed in Argentina, in Montreal, in Spain, in Colombia, all around the world. And that's for a reason, because I'm a bit of a mix. So I was born in Southeastern Europe, in Bulgaria. So that's my DNA makeup. My father was an engineer, so he took us around the world a bit. So I was raised in Iraq when I was very little. And then in Cuba is where most of my teenage years were. And this now officially is the place I've lived the longest.
Really? In Bermuda? And how long has that been?
20 years.
Wow. Okay.
So Bermuda is home through and through.
No, lovely. So how would you say what did your parents instill in you that you still hold on to today?
So again, I'm going to refer to that communist upbringing. It's very different. Pride in education, pride in knowledge. Self-confidence. My mom, very early on, she would spend her last money to pay for my education. And there was no such thing as private schools or anything like that. But I had private tutors and almost everything I could think of. So education was really, really big. And unconditional love, really. From my dad, a sense of curiosity and travel. And disruption, I would say, and not accepting the status quo and kind of going through the barriers.
Yeah. Okay. So were there any early signs that you can remember where you feel like you were destined for leadership, or did that come later in life?
I think later in life. Okay. When I was little, I actually wanted to be an actress. Acting was always, I would impersonate family members and celebrities when I was little. And there was a sense of playfulness in acting that I loved and I would have loved to have done as a career choice. And business really was the logical choice. It was a stable career choice and profession. So that's how I ended up in there. Leadership, I say I've built myself as a leader versus I have always been a leader, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that I think sometimes that's nothing wrong with that. Like sometimes, growing up, some girls are like, oh, you're bossy, so you should be this, that, and the other. So I think building yourself into a leader is also really cool as well, because you've actively worked on that, which is, I think, more important. But do you think that there were any key moments as a child or earlier in your career that shaped, I guess, the leader that you are today?
So I think going back, I really loved seeing the strength in people and seeing where they were good at what they did and bringing that out in them. So I guess leadership really is rooted in that, isn't it? It's finding the strength and talents in people that they may not even see themselves. So I think that shapes me in the leader that I am today. I see myself as an enthusiastic leader versus the parenting figure type of leadership.
Yeah. And we spoke about that when we were talking in pre, and I'm going to get to that in a little while, but I think that's one of the most fascinating things about how you lead. I love your way of thinking around that. But you've had a pretty diverse career, leading up to where you are right now, various leadership roles, strategy, operations, finance. How would you describe your leadership style and how has it evolved over the years?
So early on, before I was a leader and I was studying leaders, I saw this very patriarchal style leadership. Do as you're told, don't think, just repeat my steps. And I couldn't relate to that. And in fact, I left a specific career choice because of that, because that just wasn't me. So now I find myself more inspiring inside conversations and then leading from that and seeing organically how it happens. But I don't feel that I have to motivate people. I feel that I just have to hold space for them and let them kind of blossom, right?
What does holding space for your employees look like?
Second. Holding space for my team. I'm not a big fan on the word employees because it assumes this hierarchical structure that I'm not a big fan of. I think we all have jobs to do, really, and they're just different. And that's all that it is. And how I hold space for them is invite and celebrate differences. I feel we talk a lot about being tolerant, but tolerant is not the same as celebrating. Right? So inviting someone to the table is a fantastic start, but celebrating that they think different than me is really, really powerful. And I celebrate that. And I always say, we're colleagues before anything, and brainstorming is a huge part of the job for us. So inspiring them to be better is letting them inspire me in the same space. So holding space really is letting them know that they're safe, no matter what they say and no matter what idea they bring to the table.
No, I love that, because a lot of times, and to your point earlier around the kind of patriarchal way that we were all kind of taught to be leaders, in school growing up, but then also how most our first interactions with leaders were like that. I love that you've pivoted the way that you now lead your team, because it sounds like you lead the way that you wanted to be led when you were on a particular team in the past. And I love people who pivot in the way that they, I guess, shepherd in their teams and allow people to essentially just do what they're good at, as opposed to trying to fit everyone in a box, because that's not really what we want when we think of cohesive teams.
That's exactly right. And I have a female colleague, and we had this honest conversation early on, and she was saying to me, early in my career, I was made feel that I need to be something else to be successful. And she says, but I realized that's not me, and that will never be me. A certain characteristics of what was perceived to be a good team player. And that was very powerful to me. First of all, I was so happy that she felt comfortable in sharing this with me. And then since then, I find strength in that, in what she's actually good at. And I said, okay, well, let's find a way to apply your strength instead of looking for something that it doesn't come natural to you, you don't want to develop into. So now I very much appreciate what she's actually strong at, instead of saying, well, you should be strong at something else.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, I love that. I'm a firm believer in the Gallup Strengths Assessment. I don't know if you've ever done it before. I did it years ago for the first time, and it's basically that concept of leading from person's strengths as opposed to pushing them to do something that they're just not naturally strong in. And it's a phenomenal way to lead. It doesn't work for everybody, but it is a really good foundation for working with people's strengths. So I absolutely love that.
Though I will add something about leadership that just came to me is one thing that I tend to do with my team is I prop them up constantly, and I tell them you underestimate how you present yourself. And they're so humble. And I think I spent most of my leadership time in telling the world how amazingly talented they are, because I think they don't say it enough. So that really is my job, is to show the world and to let the world see how amazing this team is.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I guess what other qualities would you say make a good leader, other than some of the things that we've spoken about already? Like, what would you say makes an effective leader in today's business environment, considering COVID, considering everything we've been through, especially since the last time we had this conversation? What would those qualities be?
Having your back, no matter what.
Yeah.
There is this term that I learned early on called, it says failing up. So it's allowing or holding space for the team to feel comfortable to come to the leader no matter what happens, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, right? And as leaders, we mostly hear about the bad things. That's what hits our desks, right? When things are going well, we kind of, everything is just going ahead. I lost my train of thought.
It's okay.
What was the question?
You were saying we were talking about effective leadership, and what are some of those traits?
Having someone's back. And also I tend to say, when we do a great job, we celebrate the team. If something goes wrong effectively, I'm the leader, so I need to own that. And I stand at the front of that. So I'll have my team always stand behind me, and I'll take the hit.
Yeah, definitely.
When something goes wrong.
Yeah. And it happens, right? And
absolutely, it happens.
But protecting your team is also so important. And as an entrepreneur, because it's your business, right? And in terms of like your baby, like that, but you need people to help you execute those things. But when people attack, I always judge a leader on their leadership skills and how they handle those types of situations. Because throwing your team under the bus does nothing for you, right? And I don't understand it.
That's probably for me the worst quality in a leader. Actually, I find that really sad.
Yeah.
I think if you have the job of a leader, it comes with a certain responsibility. And that is one of them.
Yeah,
is
definitely.
No one's left behind and have their back. That's the job.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a bit. So the last time that we spoke, I think you had just come into the role of CEO for 2.0 Collective. You just recently changed the name. That was easily 5 years ago. So walk me through the journey of 2.0.
Oh, gosh. So I came into back then AAC and PTIX in the very hot moment of August of 2020. So I came in kind of doing a little bit of an audit and then started officially in September. And it was a really tough time. I mean, we all remember what COVID did to our economy in Bermuda and especially to local businesses. And we're still recovering from that. All of us are.
Yeah, definitely.
So in September of 2020, I walked into furloughs, redundancies. I had to walk through a lot of that challenge. That was really, really tough as a first-time CEO and as an empath. Walking my team through furloughs and redundancies was
difficult.
Was a tough thing to go through.
Yeah.
And ultimately, everyone affected is a human being, right?
Yeah.
So every decision we make in our business affects people and their lives.
Yeah.
So that was tough. Rebranding AAC into 2.0 Collective was an interesting journey. It didn't happen overnight. It was a process that took about a year from start to finish. And really, it was the industry who needed us to rebrand. When I started with AAC, certain clients would say, we think you need to rebrand. You need to look at what's next for this agency. So it was an interesting story. When I started with AAC, I used to tell the team, this is now AAC 2.0. It's the next version of the agency. So it's the next version of all of us. And when it came time to rebrand, we were thinking of a new name. And one of my colleagues said, well, you already named the agency. It's 2.0. And it signifies a lot to us. And 2.0 Collective is a very important addition. 2.0 really signifies us being better and competing with ourselves from the day before.
Yeah.
It's that constant strive for improvement, for learning. And collective is that. It goes back to this lack of hierarchy, right? And or in practice.
Yeah.
And it's a collective of minds. Our tagline is a coterie of creative thinkers. And that's how we like seeing ourselves.
Love that. So I think the first time I ever met you was I used to work with your husband, Michael Branco. And I think you were pregnant with your first daughter at the time, the first time I met you then. Okay. How old is she now?
11 and a half.
Oh my God. That half is important when you're that age, right?
She's very insistent that I say a half. So she's 11 and a half.
Yes. And that's so crazy. That was 11 and a half years ago. A little more than that because you've been pregnant at the time. But so you mentioned earlier that you've been in Bermuda for 20 years. Walk me through what brought you to Bermuda.
Work. So I came for a job here. It was really a 1-year engagement. And I thought I would just do a year and then go up to Canada. My family was in Canada. And it just, as Bermuda does, it stole my heart.
Yeah.
And in the second year, I met Michael, just by coincidence. And the rest is history, really. Yeah. But I never really thought that this would be my forever home. It was a job.
Yeah. How did you and Mike meet?
At a party.
Really?
The very old-fashioned way, believe it or not. There was no technology involved. We just really hit it off as friends. We were friends for a while before we became a couple. And that really is, to this day, is quite important in our relationship. He's my favorite person, and to this day is who I call whether something bad happens or good happens, or I'm being nerdy. And he really kind of checks me for sure. So he makes me a better person, and that to me is the litmus test. You asked about love earlier. I think for me in a partnership, in a romantic partnership, my litmus test is, does he or she make me a better human being? And that holds true.
With Mike.
Absolutely.
I love that. When you, honestly, working with Mike, and when he used to lead our team, whenever he mentioned your name, he lit up like a Christmas tree. And we used to talk about it all the time. And this is not anything new, but you could truly feel it. He was like so smitten by you. Like he was so proud of you. Cause I think you had just completed an MBA or something like that. And or it happened previously, but he was most proud of how smart you are, like your brain.
Gosh.
Like he really was. I've never forgotten that. I was actually talking to one of my former coworkers, and we were talking about that day. I was telling her I was going to interview with you, and we spoke about it at that time too. So I love that you said that, because it rang true even when you weren't around.
Oh, he's so sweet.
Aww.
I joke around that he's like my marketing department. So whenever I have a crisis of self-confidence, I just need to talk to him. And you know, he always says I'm smarter than him, which I don't know that that's true. He's the one doing the PhD right now. So
what? Mike's doing another degree?
He's doing another degree.
Oh my
so
gosh.
how I explain it is that, and you'll know what I mean, is he has so much brain power in that skull of his that there was just a lot of space in there that he still has a lot of capacity. So it was the most natural thing in the world is for him to go and do a PhD. So that's,
oh my gosh.
he started this weekend.
Oh, wow, that's
I'm so proud of
amazing.
him.
I'm not surprised.
Right?
Yeah.
Not surprised.
I'm like shocked because another thing, but definitely not a surprise at all. So you guys have 2 girls now?
We do.
Yes, and tell me about them.
So we have Madison, who you remember from my first pregnancy, who's 11 and a half.
Yes,
Madison Celeste. And then Isabella.
Yeah.
She's the little one. She's the funny bunny of the family. She's a walking comedy show.
Yeah.
She is 9 and a half. Again, the halves are very important. They're absolutely amazing, as I think every mom would say about.
Yes.
That's
fine. But I guess when we start talking about this, you know, and a lot of people hate the term work-life balance or whatever you want to call it. But as a CEO and a mom and a wife, how? Because you've got this huge job and you sit on boards, which we'll get to in a little while. And, you know, you're holding space for colleagues. And how do you balance the demands of leading a company with the responsibilities of family life?
You know what? If I'm being honest, I don't know that I do. Not every day. And my girlfriends hear about that, and Michael does. So there's this old saying that women can do it all, absolutely, just not at the very same time.
Yeah.
And I really, I would love society to stop saying that women are superhumans and that we're heroes and that we're superheroes, because we really are not.
Yeah.
We just do what needs to get done. So I think in my case, so balance comes from my village, my tribe around me that support me and keep me honest and accountable. And then I have my rituals, my meditations. Slowing down is really important to me. And then recalibrating every now and again. I did a pretty significant recalibrating exercise in July of this year. And I remapped of what is important to me and this coming year, especially with Michael's DBA.
Yeah. And what is a recalibration? What does that look like for you?
So this is where the nerd of me is going to come out.
Okay.
So in June of this year, it just felt overwhelming. Both girls had started dance, and I didn't realize how hugely stressful the month of June is.
Oh yeah, for dancing.
Oh my gosh. So I'm sending a virtual hug to all the moms out there who have, and the dads out there who have dancers, because June, it really is something else. So I now know I need to take vacation for that.
Yeah.
So in June, I said, okay, something is just not working. There is not enough of me to get all of this done.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? I will spreadsheet this. So I sat down and I wrote all my commitments. I wrote all my board work and my full-time job and my parenting and my sleep. And I did the total of the hours for the whole month. And then I divided it by a day. And before I even got into me time, couple time, friends time, I was at a negative 0.3 per day.
Hours. Wow.
0.3 negative hours per day. So I had no space for me time. I had no space for friends. I had no space for dating my husband. None of that. So when that stares you back in the face, it becomes very clear and obvious that this is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Right. So I knew there was a sprint to finish June, and then I knew something needed to happen. So I took a week off that I haven't done in a very, very long time. Mike was the only one who knew that I took the week off, and I spent that week on my own. So I would drive the kids to camp, and then I would come home, I would meditate, I would go for a walk, and I would sit and look at the water and really question of what matters to me right now and what would I recalibrate. So then I did a bit of an exercise again in that Excel spreadsheet of I graded what's important to my career, what's important to me, and had to step down from some things for this coming year. So that was a really important exercise, and I would invite every one of us, every woman out there to, if you feel that you're being stretched too thin, you're probably right, and just write them all down. And add hours and just see where you are.
Yeah. It's crazy that you say that, because I don't think I've ever looked at my time in that way, right? Like in terms of like a spreadsheet, factoring in sleep and all of that, what that looks like. And I'm probably in a deficit as well. And I don't even have children, right? So it's crazy to think of what that might look like, but I'm very curious to see what that is too, because most of us work in numbers or in some form of accountability to something every single day, but we don't do that with ourselves. So looking at it from that standpoint, and I don't think that's nerdy, I think it's smart. It's a smart way to look at it, because otherwise how would you know that you're running at a negative 3-hour deficit every day and you need to make changes? Because what then happens if you don't do that?
That's exactly it. What happens if you don't do that? And I started catching myself. I couldn't sleep as well anymore. I was forgetting things. So I said, okay, something really needs to change for me, but also for our kids, for me to support Michael in this new program, and really for my mental health as well.
Definitely. Do you ever feel guilty though, with letting things go? Like, I know sometimes because of this whole women can do it all, this superpower, all the things that, you said you would like for people to stop saying about us. Do you ever feel like, man, maybe I could try to find time to still do that, because I'm passionate about it, or it's something that I want to do, or was it just the right thing to do for you right now?
100%. I think a lot of women can relate. I know you can relate. I know we all can relate to that. There is a degree of FOMO, of fear of missing out. And then there is, well, what if my career suffers because I let go of a board? What if my friendships suffer because I don't see my friend, or I don't hear from her or him as often?
Yeah.
There is 100% that feeling of guilt. I think especially mothers, we take a bath of guilt every night when we go to bed of what could we have done better, right? And then I think in that moment, I turn to my trusted circle and I do an audit check with them. Am I doing the right thing? What do you think? And then I think the biggest test is, once I let it go, does it feel like a weight has come off my shoulders? And that's huge. And you just know.
Yeah, definitely. It's a telltale, right? Like when you feel like the weight has been lifted in particular. Absolutely. So you mentioned about your mental health and balancing that, and physical health, like in addition to obviously the balance that we've spoken about before, like how do you take care of your mental health and physical health as a CEO, mom, wife, and all of that?
Mental health, I recently went back into meditation, which I think is very underrated. Meditation is amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to say that I meditate on my own without the help of an app, but that I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
I have meditated throughout my life, doing yoga and this and that. I had let it go for a while and I picked it back up in June. I said I need a little bit of help. So I've gone back into meditation and I use Headspace. And it's been working really, really well. Some things come up that are uncomfortable, but generally speaking, you go into this role of an observer of emotions and feelings, which makes it easier. Mental health as well is just conversations with people I trust.
Yeah.
My sister, Michael, my closest friends. There are friends that your soul feels at home with.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And those friends, man, when you find those friends.
Never let them go.
And just having an afternoon, I have a very dear friend of mine, and we spent an afternoon on a boat. And we had the privilege of having an hour to the two of us. And at the end we were crying and we were hugging. And it was cleansing. It was not bad. It was an amazing, amazing time. Yeah. So that really filled my bucket. My sister is an amazing sounding board. She actually calls me out when I'm starting to not sound like myself. She says, I think you need to do something.
Those people are important as well.
Those people are very important as well. Physical health is a bit tough. I have to say it's really tough. So I have periods of time when I'm very disciplined and I go to the gym and I work out every day. And periods like right now where just I don't have enough hours in the day. So I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Yeah.
So I try to do what I can in healthy eating. I try to prepare my meals. I take my meals to work with me. Unless it's for a meeting, I kind of sit at my desk and work through lunch. So I love seeing what's in my food, if that makes sense. So I love making my own food.
Yeah. I enjoy cooking. I just hate the cleanup aspect of it. And when you live alone, it's also so much easier to just get something quickly, like
That's
pay
true.
for it. But I'm trying to be better with the cooking again. I think that's super important. But I like that, the thought of I like to see what's in my food. So it's a good way to look at it.
And you know, there was this Mexican film, I think it's called Hot Water for Chocolate, I think it's called. And they were saying that when you cook and you sprinkle a little bit of love, and it goes a long way. So the food we eat and the thoughts we put into our food really reflects on the way we feel after we eat it.
That's fair. Yeah, no, I like that. Yeah, for sure. Okay, I want to go back a little bit because we've mentioned about your boards and that you sit on a ton of boards or did, and then you've reflected since then. Like your involvement with the boards that you're on, like how do you approach leadership in those boards? But then I do want to take a step back before we get there about how you got into boards, because I think a lot of times people are not sure how people get on boards, and I think we still do have a significant underrepresentation of women on boards. So I do want to start there, and I know I just threw a lot at you, and I apologize, but my thought process changed in the middle of that question.
No problem. This is a very very rich question, and we could do an entire podcast just on that topic.
Wow.
So you have to kind of bring me back to earth.
I got
because I'm very passionate about this topic, and I'm still on my journey in my board work. That's my long-term goal, is to be a professional NED. So how I got involved into boards was that when I was in Fire Mines 10 years ago, I was logically on the executive board, and our chair at the time, Vicky, said to me, I see something in you. You have a very unique strategic way of thinking, and you disrupt in a very interesting way. You challenge the status quo, and that's very helpful on a board. Most people thought that our board was not functional because we were a family business, but in fact, actually, it's all the opposite, because we were the masters of our own destiny. If we took it as a joke, then we wouldn't get anywhere, right? So we actually had to be very serious about it. So she really ignited that curiosity, and she said, I think you can do more with this. So she then introduced me to this program, to Institute of Directors, which sounded so convoluted at the beginning. And I'm more than happy to talk to anyone about it. So open invite, if you're interested in this, find me on LinkedIn, more than happy to talk about it. And there's 3 levels in Institute of Directors. The first one is 4 elements and 4 exams. The second one is the diploma. And then the third one is becoming a certified board director once you have a portfolio of boards. So because I love studying, that sounded really interesting to me. So I went and sat through all the courses, did the exams, took the diploma, all in I think a year. So it was a bit of an overachiever there. And then after that, that really opened my appetite for board work. And I loved the strategic thinking of it and the tactical thinking of it. And then I discovered how difficult it is
to get on a board,
especially for women. So the board landscape in Bermuda is known. So it's a challenge for newly certified directors to be welcomed on boards is not an easy task. So it is building your brand. You mentioned that earlier. It is having this public persona, speaking at conferences, being on panels, and really showing the industry what you're made of, right? And I always say when I'm approached about a board, I always say what kind of board director I am, and I will challenge. I will challenge the status quo. I will ask the questions, And that is the type of director I'm on. So if a company is looking for a yes person, that's not me. But if you're looking for someone who wants the best for the business, then through this challenging approach, then that's my way. And I'm still, it's a journey. It really is. I've been doing board work for the last 7 years. I still have a long way to go to where I want to be. I'm very lucky to have amazing mentors in the industry who help me with advice. And I'm very appreciative for their advice, and I'm still working on it.
Why do you think it's so difficult for women to get on boards? Because I don't think that's particularly a Bermuda problem. I think that that's just a problem around the world. But so not specifically to Bermuda, yes. But why do you think it's a bit of still a challenge?
So I'll start a bit far answering the question. So one of my favorite books is Sapiens by Yuval Harari, and I was listening to it driving here.
Yeah.
So this kind of ventures into the whole discussion of DEI, you know. Society as we know it has been built with these biases, right? And there is racial bias and there's gender bias. So to answer your question specifically is there was this historical bias towards the female gender, that we are less prepared, we're less decisive. Well, what happens if we upset her and she cries?
Or periods on.
Or she's on that type of the month, which is just a terrible thing to say. So I think historically there is that history of bias, and then, well, but she doesn't have enough experience. But how would she get enough experience if she doesn't have a chance to be on a board?
Exactly.
So is this perpetual cycle, right, of there have not been women on boards, therefore there are less women on boards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes total sense.
So those amazing, strong women who break that glass ceiling and end up on boards, they are those strong voices to then recruit more of us on these boards. And that's what I do as well. If I'm on a strong board, I try to recruit more women so that we break that notion that women are emotional and that, you know, we're called the B word because we are we lean in, right? So it's still a journey. So to answer your question, why I think it's a mix. It's a historical kind of development of bias, gender bias, and then just the status quo with the comfort, right? I think that's it.
Yeah, definitely. No, I totally agree with you. And I know we've had offline conversations around diversity and the big part of DEI being that equity element of it. And I think obviously we could go down a rabbit hole with that as well.
Really can.
But it's definitely something that has significant, I guess, recourse when we think about boards, when we think about women in leadership. Because if we think about the amount of women in CEO positions in Bermuda, it's more than it is in other places in the world, but it still has a significant way to go. And all the points that you made around why not are still so prevalent. And it's almost laughable because it's like, it's 2024. Like, you know what I mean? How are we still having conversations around, oh, she's too emotional, or what, like we're dealing with it right now with Kamala Harris and the, race for the president of the United States. Like, what happens if she's on her cycle and there's a war that breaks? Like, she's going to send us into war. It's like, people are really making these outlandish comments about women in 2024. And it just is like, what planet am I on that these are still things that are, being discussed as opposed to her education or the work that she's done in the past? I don't know why we still think this way when it comes to women, as if we just wake up and just flow by the seat of our pants every single day. It's just,
right.
It's amazing to me.
And then add on to, well, she's the default parent.
Yeah.
So what happens if her child is sick and she needs to go home instead of being in a board meeting? And then you show up as a woman in the boardroom, and if you have a strong opinion, they're like, "Whoa, what happened to you today? Are you okay?" We just have work to do. We still have
so much work to do. I know. I think about it. I had a meeting this week, and my default kind of response with my CEO, who's my direct manager, is if I do anything that is slight, that could be taken the wrong way in any way, shape, or form, I inform him of it immediately. I'm like, hey, I was on a call. Things were a little hairy. Wasn't, you know me now, and we've worked together long enough that he's aware of, the connotations around calling Black women or Black people period aggressive and, things like that. So I would say, I inform him of these things. One, so if someone does say something to him, he's not, blindsided by it, but he also knows my work ethic now, and he can also defend me in those positions as well. But it's such a interesting topics to kind of go back and forth with, because half of how myself as a woman, yourself as a woman, have to go into responding to people. We have to think before we can just say what it is that we want to say. We have to worry about how we're saying it, how we're postured. Cannot be too emotional, has to be as logical as possible, speak with all the facts before you're taken seriously. And then it still can be taken out of context just because you're a woman.
That's right. But then if you have a strong opinion, sometimes that's a bad thing, because then you're trouble.
Yep.
So you're doomed if you do, you're doomed if you don't. Yeah. I'm lucky that I'm on some boards. I'm a proud member of YPO, and I sit on regional boards and local boards. And lucky for me, at YPO, the organization really appreciates leaders and people who lean in and have a strong opinion. So I have learned in those environments how to weigh in, in a balanced way, I suppose, and how to fight for what's right. So I'm lucky. I'm lucky there. But again, the work continues. Honestly, Deshay, we have a long to go. We have come a long way, right, from 100 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, gosh, I was listening to Sapiens in the car, and they were talking about sexual assault and how even 50 years ago there were countries where if a husband sexual assaults as his wife, that's actually not illegal. And I was blown away, right? So we've come a long way, and we still have work to do. And I think the important part is, as women, to support each other and not take for granted what we have. So I talk a lot about privilege and how to use that for empowerment, and that's how I use my privilege, is to use that to bring, others with me who may not have the opportunities.
No, absolutely. And I think that's so important. I love that, because you said that earlier as well. And it was something that I'm glad you brought it back up, because a lot of times, and I say this in different settings when it comes to diversity, but we'll use it in the gender setting at this point. But, we're constantly still breaking these glass ceilings, right? Like, I feel like every time we turn, it's the first in this or the first in that when it comes to first female to do this, that, and the other, right? And sometimes we had a generation of women, and I think it's gotten a lot better now, who kind of coveted those positions, because it's like, oh my God, I'm the only woman, there can't be two, you know what I mean? And that sense could be said in, racially as well, depending on the environment that you're in. And so I love the fact that you are so open to reaching down or not down or across or wherever it is, to bring along another woman with you, because what you don't want to do is leave a board and go into another board, and then they replace you with a man. And then it's starting all over again. And then the next woman is breaking the ceiling that you already broke. Just because someone didn't extend a hand to bring on another female into that particular board. So I commend you for it, because one, it takes a significant amount of self-awareness and confidence to know that bringing on someone else is not going to affect your position. And it also shows courage and, just a lot of empathy to, like, I don't want anyone to have to go through what I had to go through.
Exactly
so
right.
I totally commend that. No, definitely. So you spoke about personal branding, and I kind of hate the term, but it is what it is, right? And so, like, as a mom, as a CEO, like, how do you balance the demands? Not demands, but how do you brand yourself as both a business leader, a role model for your girls, and other women in leadership? Like, how do you work on that branding?
So personal branding is an interesting one. I spoke at a B2C conference, and they asked me to speak about personal branding. So part of what I said was that, want it or not, we all have a personal brand.
Yeah.
So we may say, oh no, I don't have a personal brand. I don't need a personal brand, but everything is a personal brand. How you say hello to someone is a personal brand, whether you hug them or you shake their hand, or how you address them, how you sign your emails, how you open your emails, right? Whether you start emails with Dear XYZ and you say, I hope your weekend is a wonderful one before you start your emails. All of those things are personal branding, right? How you speak of people that are not in the room, that's personal branding as well, of yours, right? That speaks volumes. So personal branding is not only professional personal branding. It's who you are as a person and the consistency of that, right? Is the consistency of being, caring for people on the job and off the job, right? So for me, personal branding, I guess what's important to me is empathy. That will always be important to me. Curiosity on understanding your point of view. I'm so curious about differences, genuinely. I think if we were all the same, the world would be so boring.
Yeah, totally.
So understanding how you see the world is super important to me. And then being fair as much as possible, right? And I'm not delusional to say that I always know what's fair, because there is always 7 versions of the truth, and I may not see a perspective that you see, right? Yeah. But even the quest for fairness is for me is on the right path, right? And also I am sometimes a bit hard on myself when I do a self-audit at the end of the day of what I could have done better. Yeah. And ultimately I am learning to give myself grace and to be kind to myself and to say we're all learning, we're all building ourselves, and personal branding is a journey, right? Though if you ask me personal branding with my girls versus personal branding in the boardroom, I have had to build a personal brand in the boardroom. And I think I'm known for being a strong voice on the boards, because quite frankly, if you're a female on a board and you don't have a strong voice, more than likely you won't have a voice. Yeah. So that's just how it is. Yeah. With our girls, I tend to have a little bit of that traditional discipline. Obviously nothing physical, but just really drawing the boundaries on what's healthy and in behaviors and what's not. And then with my friends, I would love to think that I make their souls feel at home. Yes. And I guess not being judgy is a huge one as well. Just being open-minded.
Definitely. No, I get that. And I definitely appreciate it, because sometimes, and I love what you said about just being a good person, right? Like you can focus so much on what you want people to perceive about you, but if you're not just a good person, like that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So I love that you said that around just being good, or, whole, or whatever that looks like to you, because if you're just authentically yourself and you're just who you are in different spaces, and I guess holding back for certain places and where you are is important as well, because not everyone should get you in total at all times. Like you've got to reserve some things for your private life, but I can totally appreciate just being a good person, because some people, that's difficult. It's difficult to be a good person for some people. So yeah, just being good is definitely really important. Yeah,
absolutely. I think part of what I think of, I've made a personal part of my personal brand lately, especially since COVID, is standing up for the local businesses. Me being part of a local business community, I'm really passionate about standing up for all of us and saying in this quest for keeping business on the island. Yeah. A lot of international business sends business off island that we are more than capable and happy to take care of on the island. And it's a big passion of mine, is to advocate for all of us, not just for 2.0, not just for PTEX, but for all of us on the island who provide amazing services. Is to tell the IB community we're here, and we're there's a lot of talented businesses that can take care of you in the best possible way. Yeah. So that's also part of my personal branding.
Yeah, definitely. It's really important, because, a lot of times it's so much easier to outsource, especially if it's a larger company and their, marketing department or communications department is in New York or wherever, and they can just get it done that way. But because I used to do communications as well, but they still miss that Bermuda piece, right? They don't always get it. So engaging with the local company is so important, because you're getting good work, number one, but you're also getting the authenticity of someone actually being here as well, which is really important.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it's so crazy. I always say this, but time flies by really quickly. And so I just want to make sure we're getting to everything. But I guess what would you leave, I guess, in final thoughts, right? Like, what would you leave to those people who are listening, women in particular, who are balancing the demands of their career, family, personal growth, excuse me. What advice, I guess, would you give them, or what would you leave with them in terms of what it will take to maintain and achieve success in those areas? What advice would you give to those women?
Build your spreadsheet.
Definitely. Well, you're gonna have to patent that spreadsheet.
I am more than happy to share. It's really not complicated, but really take a look at your life and assess what really is important in the most honest way. Keep the people who make your soul feel at home close. And at our age, at my age, I can't have 20 people like that. I don't have time anymore. But those select few that I feel at home with, I keep them close. Give yourself grace. Is such a huge one. I mean, how many evenings, how many nights I lay in bed and I think, gosh, I could have done such a better job at parenting, and I lost my cool with the girls and I have tears in my eyes, and then I have to kind of hug the little Polina and be like, it's okay. You know, you did the best you could and we can try again tomorrow. Yeah. Right. And slow down. People are asking me how this summer went, and I say deliciously slow. And I absolutely love a slower pace. And this conversation is a great example to just slow down and smell those flowers, not metaphorically, literally. I mean, I make myself actually smell the flowers, right? Meditate, whatever that means to you, whether you're reading a book or watching a show, or do what you need to do. And then think of who you want to be, not for how you want who you are to affect your job, but like what matters to you, what values are important to you, right? And then the rest will come. So don't serve how to say, your business acquaintances or your professional goals. Bring it back to basics and think of who you want to be, and then the rest will just take care of itself. And an open invite to, if you want to have a cup of coffee with me, I'm more than happy to. At next to our office at Rook Island, I'm always open to meeting with someone new, exchanging ideas, and just being inspired or inspiring if I'm lucky enough. So always up for a cup of coffee.
Love that. Okay. And then finally, my final question to all of my guests is, what do you want to be remembered for? Obviously, a very long time from now, when someone mentions Polina Branco and the effect that you had on them or any situation, what would you want them to say about you? What does that memory look like for you?
Is that saying people don't remember what you said, but the way you made them feel? And I hope that a handful of people remember that their soul was at home with me.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. And if anyone wants to get in contact with you or 2.0 Collective for any of your services, what's the best way to do that?
So 2.0collective.com. Find me on LinkedIn. Polina Branco is the easiest way. Find us on Facebook. We have an Instagram. We have LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much.
I never asked you about the services for 2.0. So if you wanted to say that now, just in case anyone's interested.
2.0 Collective is a creative agency. We like to say we love being creative. We are a full services marketing agency. What we love doing is being creative and thinking outside the box. So we do marketing campaigns, we do logo design, any creative works, and we love any creative projects.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we just had a great conversation with the amazing Polina Branco, who is the CEO of 2.0 Collective here in Bermuda. If you have any questions for her, like she said, please reach out to her on LinkedIn, Polina Branco. You can find her there. And if you want to learn more about 2.0 Collective and the services that they provide, make sure you head over to their website, 2.0collective.com. Thank you for spending some time with me today. And again, a special shout out to our sponsors, 59 Front, Brown and Company, and Scooter Mart. As always, guys, thanks for watching Hustle Her Podcast.